Hello everyone. Welcome to Under the Needle. This is this is oh my goodness, I can't even talk everyone. This is our continuation of our Quilts in Italy series based on this book by Keith Fassett. Okay, and today we are going to finish our first quilt out of this quilt top out of this book. We are doing the stone log cabin, which is on page 54 in the book. This is what we are finishing up today, right here. We have 3 more rounds of logs to put around the entire perimeter of the quilt, and then it will be ready for quilting. Oh my goodness. This is week 3, I believe, and we will have it completed. And I'm so excited. It's always nice to have a new quilt top ready to go and be quilted. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Mia. So, welcome everybody. We're going to get started here in just a moment. And of course, for those of you that are new, there are links in the bottom below the video if you want to follow along with us on this journey of quilts in Italy. The next quilt we're going to be doing, we're going to finish the stone log cabin today. The next one we are going to start working on next week. Now, I'm not going to be actually cutting the fabric for the quilt next week. We're going to be going over how to cut the fabric next week. I still have fabric ordered that has not came in, but this is the next one. It's called the zigzag quilt, and it's on page 90 in the book. There are 20 different quilt patterns in this book, but that will be the next one that we do in our Quilts in Italy series. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you, and we are going to get started. So, hope everyone is having a wonderful Saturday. Let's see here. Hi, Terry. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Pamela. Oh, wonderful, Sandra. Now, listen, everybody. Inside the book, it gives you exactly how much fabric you need for each one of the Keith fabrics that are in the book. But that doesn't mean you have to use the fabric in the book. You can substitute other fabric for it if you're comfortable with doing that. If you're not comfortable with doing that, take the book to a quilt shop or fabric store and they will help you select fabric to make that quilt top. Okay, just wanted to get that out there as well. I also think the patterns in this book would be beautiful with Tula Pink fabric as well, and you could even mix Tula Pink and Keith Fassett fabric together because it's all happy fabric. Okay, that was a mouthful. That being said, I'm going to swap my camera and we're going to get started. Okay. So looking at my book, I'm on round 18. There are 20 rounds working out from the center of this quilt top. Oh, let me read. Oh, hi, Janelle. I love this quilt also, Janelle. I can't wait to get it quilted. But there are 20 rounds, and in this chart, it tells you exactly what width and length to make the strips so that they fit perfectly around. I have cut this exactly as I've been going, and you're going to see how I do that. But these strips have fit onto this quilt perfectly, 100% perfectly, no errors or anything. Love this pattern. Okay, so my next round, I need to cut 2 66-inch ones and 2 74-inch ones. I did deviate away part of the way that the pattern was written, because the way the pattern's written, you would cut the 4 different logs go all the way around out of the same fabric. Each one would be a different length. I cheated. Log A I would cut 2 of those, and log D, I would cut 2 of that length, and then I would just simply sew on the sides and then the piece across the top to make it work. So there's always a different way you can do things. For me, it just worked out better that way, but you could certainly do it either way. If I highly recommend, just since you have the book, follow the instructions in the book, and that'll solve any problems that you might have. But cut them exactly to the size in the chart for the quilt that we're working on, and your pieces will fit together perfectly as long as you maintain a consistent and accurate 1/4 inch seam while you're piecing. Okay, so here's where I'm at. This is round 17 right here. This is where we ended last Saturday. Way over here is the center. So there's one, just count them out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Thank you, Mia. I actually use if I was just piecing a regular log cabin block, that's how I came up with that. I didn't invent that or anything, but it was just, for me, the math was easier to do. Okay, so I'm now going to cut 2 66-inch lengths, which means since fabric is normally approximately 44 inches in width, I'm going to have to piece some strips together, and that's what I'm going to do next. And get my book laid down over here. Get my quilt top out of the way. Okay, so the next fabric, this is the same fabric that's in the very center of the quilt. Round 18 is. And so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to sew all of these strips I've cut into one long piece, and then I will cut them apart to the exact length that they need to be according to the book. Okay, so end to end. And once again, my settings on my machine, I just have the stitch length set at 1.8 millimeters, and I just have the center straight piecing stitch with the needle in the center position. I am using the digital dual feed foot with the 1/4 inch piecing plate on that digital dual feed foot. And I'm just going to sew these all together. Oops. There we go. I'm going to sew it all together in one long piece, and then I'm going to trim them. Trim the seams, any excess off the seams to a 1/4 inch. And the great thing about this type of fabric, it has a nice print, and you're not going to see where you've seamed it together. I mean, you could if you really looked for it closely and studied it, you could, but just to look at it, you'll never be able to tell that these strips have been seamed together. Okay. Get under there. And yes, I do have my extension table on since I don't have a built-in cabinet for my machine. I'm just sitting on top of this big table here, like most of us do. It's all good. Puppy, I hear you under there. Did you wake up from your nap? Puff and I were upstairs napping just a little while ago. Had my alarm set, so I got up in time. Okay. course, you always put your right sides together and all that fun stuff. And I am having a little bit of leftover fabric, and that's okay. I'd rather have too much than not enough fabric. It's all good. Okay, there those are all cut. I'm going to trim that. And I'm going to snip my threads apart, and I'm just going to trim off the excess. I'm going to trim it down to about approximately 1/4 inch. Just trim off the excess fabric from the seams. It's all good. This part, you don't have to be exact when you're trimming, but just approximately 1/4 inch. This will give us one long continuous strip of fabric to cut our other pieces from. One more trimmy. I have that all trimmed. There we go. Oops, come here, you. There we go. Now I have my nice long strip that I can trim. Isn't that pretty? Look at that pretty flower there. Isn't that pretty? Okay. Oh, absolutely, Tracy. You can always use your leftover fabric, whether it be Kaif or Tula or any of the other fabulous fabrics that we have to play with. Okay, so, not yet. Got to do my trimming. Almost forgot. Okay. So, let me look at that number again. I want to make sure I cut this exactly right. So, 2 at 66 and 2 at 74. Okay. 2 at 66. That's first. Let's get those first. There. So I'm using a yardstick to do this. And now I want this 36 and 30 would be 66, and that's where I'm going to want it at. I put this pin right on the 30 mark on my yardstick. I'm going to put a second pin at the end of it here, and that's where we'll cut. There we go. Let me get my first pin out. Then where I place that pin, that's approximately 66 inches from one of the ends on this fabric strip I created. And I'm just going to fold it in half. And as long as I have that pin right up here at the top of the fold line, and my sides are both matched up and even, this side and this side, all I have to do is crease it, pull out the pin, and snip it, and I have a nice straight cut right there. Okay, so I'm putting a little pressure towards the top. See here, there we go. I'm pulling up towards the top, up that way. Just holding up the blade right up against that and snip. And now I have a nice square cut. If you're more comfortable using a rotary cutter and a ruler, you can most certainly do it that way. Whatever works for you is the way that you should do it. Okay. Here's 166. Now I need another one, the same length. Excuse me. There's 36 inches where that pin's at. Then put another one at the 30-inch mark. Right there. Right there, that'll make another 66 inches. I really try to be careful about removing pins as I go, because I am barefoot in my studio, and I don't want to drop a pin on the floor and find it in one of my feet. And there we go. Now I have my two 66-inch cuts made. Okay. Next, I think it was 74. Let's check again. Better to check and be safe than sorry. Yes, 2 at 74 inches. 2 at 74 inches, which would be what? 36 and 36 is 72, plus 2 would be 74. Okay, so 36 and then another 36. One more. Ouch. And then we're going to add 2 inches past this pin. Okay, that made 72. 72 right there. Let me back that lens out just a hair. And then I'm going to add 2 inches past that one. And that will be 74 right there. Now I know you're probably thinking, well, why don't you just double it over and get your other 74 measured that way? I want to measure each strip precisely so that I don't have any type of surprises waiting for me when I sew it down. I just find it way more accurate to actually do it the method that I just showed you. Okay. Of course, in my cutting room, in the other room, I have a big 8-foot long table. It's actually a cutting table. And it's much easier to measure and cut out these type of lengths on that, but it's not a camera-friendly area. So there is 174. Now we do have to do one more 74-inch strip. $36. Another 36. Ooh, this is going to be close, everybody. Ooh-wee, that's going to be close. Woo! I mean, that's almost going to be exactly the length that I need. Boy, howdy. I didn't realize it would be that close, or I'd have been sweating bullets. You know what? That came out to exactly 74. So, boy, howdy. And that was all of that fabric I had. My fabric came out of a kit, okay, for this particular quilt top. And that's what you have to be really, if you have it in a kit that you've bought where you haven't actually picked the yardage yourself, sometimes there's very little room for error when you're cutting fabric. Okay, so I have my 4 pieces. Now we're going to get those sewed on, get them stitched down. And the way this works that I'm doing it, I'm going to put 2 pieces across the top and the bottom, my shortest pieces, and then the longer pieces up and down each side. Okay. Let's move that yardstick out of the way for right now, for this precise moment in time. Okay. And I'm going to pre-pin my 1 strip in place for my first seam. This is actually doing like a test pin to make sure everything lines up like we want it to. And you know, the sewing is not what takes so long to do as the prep work when you're making a quilt, because it's one thing you do not want to rush is cutting out your pieces, because if you rush and you make an error, which I made one, I think on the first day I had to recut and all that fun stuff, but that means your pieces aren't going to line up perfectly, and who wants to, that's not a fun thing to have to deal with. So okay, almost there. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to sew that one down. There you go. There is that end. Boy, I remember in the beginning it was really fast because, of course, the pieces were not as long as they are now. It didn't take no time to pin it down and stitch it back up and all that fun stuff. But you know what? The good thing about this, when you get to the stage we're at now, you can see that finish line just ahead of you, and that makes it oh so nice. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Just making sure my raw edges are all lined up nice and neat. Keeping this area flat. That's what I'm doing right there. I'm making sure it's nice and flat so that it feeds through nice and evenly and doesn't pull to one side. Now, if you watched the episode Feature Friday last night, my idea for the unit that I'm making, that I'm strip piecing, which I will continue, it's not out of Cafe fabric, but this is the pattern I base that on. It's this one right here. It's in this book called Rusty Squares, but I'm just using some of my scraps to make this one. But that's what that is. That's a 25 patch. So if you watched last night and you were thinking, well, I might like to make that, right here is the way to do that, okay? Right here's the way I'm doing my Friday nights right now. This is what I'm doing live on camera on Friday nights, is the Rusty Squares, page 48. The only difference is I am not using Cafe fabric in that one. Okay. Oh, let's see here. Hi, Jackie. Oh, you're fine. Oh, absolutely, Sarah. We have all made that mistake. And I can tell you that one of the boo-boos I made on this one was not while I was at the sewing machine, when I was cutting because all these strips are cut to a different width. I erroneously cut out of my stock fabric, instead of, I think, a 4-inch strip, I cut 6 inches. So I had to trim 2 inches off of that and then piece 2 strips together lengthwise to get my other 4-inch strip. It happens. It happens to all of us. But you know, there's no rule. You can piece fabric together to make a quilt piece. There's nothing wrong with that. People have done it for more, a couple of 100 years. People have done that. And there's nothing wrong with piecing fabric together to cut it out into a piece to make another piece. I actually like doing that because you can get some really cool effects that way, and we're going to explore those techniques in the future. It's all right to have a quilt piece pieced itself. And we're just moseying right along here. And see if you keep your excess fabric here to the left of the needle in this area where I'm rubbing right here. It is beautiful, so I'm petting my quilt top. But that's not the reason I'm doing that. I'm keeping this nice and smooth and flat as the whole unit feeds through. That makes your fabric feed through nice and even without pulling to the right or the left and throwing your seam allowance off. Okay. What I'm doing here, since I didn't press where I joined these strips together, I'm just going to open up that seam as I'm sewing, and then that seam will be pressed open, finger pressed open that way. Coming up to the end of that first seam line on round 18. Okay, there's one down. Now we're going to do the opposite side of the quilt. Make sure I got all my pins out. Yes, I did. You see that one right there. Check it out. There's that fabric attached to our other pieces. Pretty. Pretty, pretty. Now we're going to do the very opposite end of it. And like I said, I'm doing it onto the short ends first, which is the top and the bottom of the quilt top. Okay. And we're just going to pin our next piece in place before we start to sew. And by pre-cutting these to exact lengths, it helps keep the entire quilt top nice and square. Because I can tell you from doing a lot of long arm quilting, it's not fun to quilt if it's not square. It will just throw everything in a frame out of square if this quilt top itself is not square. Excuse me. Alrighty, let's get some more pinning done here. And some more. Now I'm not stretching this as I'm pinning. I'm just lining it up, just making sure this is like another fail-safe here. making sure it fits, because since these are cut to width, I do not want to have to get to an end and do any trimming. That will throw your quilt top out of square. Excuse me. Perfect. Alrighty, now we're ready to sew that line down. Sew down that edge, that seam line. Oops, I pulled a pin out. There we go. Did you put back in there, you? You need to stay in there till I take you out. Okay. Yes, I talked to my quilt. I talked to my machine. I talked to my pins. It's all good. Okay. Sarah. Okay, Sarah. You talked about last night about 10-year-old material. Yes, Sarah, you don't want to use 10-year-old thread in your sewing. Okay. After 5 years, it becomes really iffy. So the best way I can describe your thread, if it's 5 years old, you do not want to piece with it, because regardless of the climate that you keep it in, it will dry rot. That certainly applies to 100% cotton thread. Polyester thread would have a little bit longer shelf life on it, but normally, for thread you're going to sew seam lines with, yeah, it shouldn't really be. At 5 years, you need to get it used up or put it in a box. If you have a serger, you can use old thread in the loopers. And that's how I use up when I get thread that's older than 5 years. That's usually what I earmark it for. Excuse me. But normally I don't have thread that sits around for 5 years. You should never buy up so much thread that you can't conceivably use it in a 5-year let's see. Sandra, how many different fabrics does this pattern require? Well, Sandra, that's a good question. Let's just see here. This particular pattern requires, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's approximately 12 different fabrics in the quilt top. 12 different fabrics in the quilt top. Because a few of the fabrics repeat as you're coming out. But this particular pattern we're working on right now requires 12 different fabrics. And there are 20 rounds coming out from the center rectangle of this particular quilt top. Here we go. And that's half of it sewed on. Now we have our 2 longer side pieces to trim, to attach. So that top and bottom strip I put on was 66 inches, so that's the width. And now I'm going to add 74. So right now it will be approximately 70. When I finish this round 18, the quilt top will be approximately 74 inches long and about 70 inches wide, approximately. Okay, let's do the next one. Let's get this first side piece sewn on. Okay. Perfect. Alrighty. Love it when it comes out so nice and even. Oops, I'm in here. Wrong one. Don't sew that. There's the line we're going to sew next, right here. Alrighty. And let's see here. Oh, no worries, Sarah. Thank you. You're welcome. Now, Sandra, it would probably take, let me think here. No, to make one this size, you would need 2 jelly roll, pre-done jelly rolls. Okay. Then I know you would have enough if you had 2 jelly rolls. But you could totally make a smaller version of it if you desired to. And it would be beautiful regardless of, because when you buy a jelly roll of fabric, those colors are going to work perfectly together. It takes the guesswork out of having to buy fabric when you use pre-cuts as a guide. See, I didn't smooth this out, and it wanted to pull to one side. And there we go. Now she'll be happier. Puffy's down under the table just snoring for all it's worth. He didn't get a long enough nap, I don't think. Okay. Take you out, Mr. Pin. opening up these seams where I piece my strips together as I'm going. Just finger pressing them open. Kind of already know how I'm going to quilt this. You know, it's something I do think about when I'm just sitting, and piecing and everything. I start to imagine how I want to quilt it. And since I have a long arm, I just finished that one. There's one more on this round to go here. And how I'm going to quilt this. I'm gonna do half of they're gonna be look like a feather, but I'm gonna use the seam as a center, but half of a feather stem is gonna go out from the center to the outside edge of the quilt. So for instance, in this strip right here, I'll just quilt and do feathers all the way around on that one fabric, and each one will have its own round. There'll be 20 rounds of feathers going around the center of this quilt, is how I plan on quilting this. I love to quilt me a lot of feathers and modified feathers. It's a very versatile tool once you get the knack of, and the feather, it sounds complicated. It just takes practice. And I'm talking free motion here. I rarely do any type of computerized quilting. I do free motion. And I just really like the texture that it adds. I'll probably also stitch it in the ditch as well. We'll see. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Probably will. The last one I did similar to this, I did. It really turned out nice. Don't know thread colors or anything yet, but I am going to order some CAF for the backing fabric for this one as well. And I'll do my best to find one of the fabrics that is in the quilt top for my backing fabric. I already have the binding fabric for it. It's this fabric right here, this black and white stripe. Have enough of that for the binding. You know, this might just get an overall off-white thread or a light gray colored thread for the quilting thread. I just don't know yet. Yeah, something's off there. Check that out. Check that out. I mismeasured one, everybody. Did I? I meant to measure that one again. That's why that other one was so close. I mismeasured. I meant to measure this. See? What did I just say? I still do it, and I just did it here. That was way off. Check that out. See that? Okay, so let me measure this one again. Which means I will measure the other one again once I get to it. Okay. Let me start down this way instead. That had a seam in it. There we go. Okay. So, right there. Right there. There's 36. The number I'm after is 74. Okay. That pin means 72. Then 2 inches past that would be 74. Which means I may have to adjust that second piece as well. That second strip that's 74, it might be a little bit off as well. Trying to, that's me talking while I'm working. Yeah, that can throw you off as well. It's all good because you know what? All it means is I just may have to seam another piece of fabric down. Big woo. I have a little excess fabric here to make that happen if I need to. Okay. There's that. I'm going to set this little piece here to the side, right up there, in case I need it. Now that should fit just perfectly. Oh, wait a minute. So that other one, this was my last strip, everybody. So that first one fit perfectly. You saw that. So I'm good to go now. This was the very first one I cut at 74 inches, and I was way off on that. Alrighty. Now we'll just pin that down again. It's always fun when that happens, right? Oh, wonderful, Sue. Yeah, all of his books are great. I have another one of the books that is called Quilts in America. And we'll move on once we do a few of the quilts out of this one here. Out of the quilts in Italy, there's at least one more. I've already got number 3 picked out in this Quilts in Italy book that I want to make. Because they're just so yummy. And what it means in these books, everybody, Quilts in Italy, that means where the quilts in the book were photographed at. They were all photographed on location in Italy. That's what that means. And in any of his books, I know there's one in England and so forth and so on, but it really refers mostly to the location that the quilts were photographed at. Okay, let me just check something here. And yes, okay. Making sure I had everything going on like it needs to be, and it is. Okay. Okay, now get this straightened out so it lays nice and flat. Okay. And now we're off. This will be strip number 4 on round 18 in our stone log cabin. You know, log cabin is such a versatile pattern. I love log cabin. The very first quilt I can ever remember sleeping under when I was a little kid was a log cabin quilt that my Meemaw made me. And those, ever since I was a little kid, I always sleep under quilts. Even in the summertime, I have summer quilts, I have winter quilts, and you know, there's nothing better than sleeping under a quilt that someone has made with love for you, or that you have made for yourself. You know, today's beds are so big, and that makes a quilt really heavy. I would much rather have 2 or 3 smaller quilts on my bed than one giant king-size super duper quilt. It's all good. Those big king-size quilts, gosh, they are They can really be heavy. Phooey. And let's open up this seam where that strip was joined. There we go. Everybody, all I'm doing when I come up to a seam line on these strips where I've joined the strips together to get my length, I'm just finger pressing them open. That's all that I'm doing. Oh, wait a minute now. Something is still off here. Oh, no, it's not. That was folded. Ooh-wee. I was thinking, now wait a minute. I just measured that thing a second time. It folded on me. Had a fold in it. Ooh-wee. And that one is sewn down. Yeehaw. So that makes round 18 complete. There's only 2 more rounds to go, and this quilt top will be finished. And there it is right there. I'm going to spread this out. I'm going to get me a drink of my coffee before I start piecing some more strips together. There we go. Okay. But there we go. Set this down under here for right this second. We'll just spread that out. Let me get a nice look at that. Isn't that pretty? Makes me think of my grandma, to be perfectly honest. The next fabric, I'm going to lay it out here and then I'll get my coffee. This is round 19. It's called, this is Paperweight, I think. Paperweight or Milleflore, one of the two. I can't remember the name. Love this stuff. It comes in a bunch of different colorways. Isn't that pretty though? Makes you think of those little curls inside of a glass paperweight. I'm pretty sure this is a paperweight fabric. Legs. Oh, I love those fabrics too. The mirror legs. Oh, it's all good, Sue. Yes, Eugenia, I thought that was you. My goodness, I'm blind as a bat today. It's amazing I can even put 2 pieces of fabric together today. My vision is off today. Put my eyeballs back on here. But yes, oops, let me get that pin out of there. So next, I'm going to piece all of these strips together, and then we're going to cut them to the proper length. And hopefully I'll do better than I did on my last round. Woo-wee. Okay. So, got all of these little strippies to put together. And I don't know if you could notice that on camera, but these strips are narrower than the previous set of strips. Oh, thank you, Eugenia. And just keeping on. Normally, I like to have everything cut to size and all that fun stuff before I ever sit down at my machine. That way I can just sit there and sew and sew and sew. But the reason I didn't do that on this quilt, I wanted everyone to see the process of cutting all these goodies out. Now next Saturday, we're going to be going through different ways to cut for the next quilt top in this series that we're going to make, which is the zigzag quilt in the Quilts in Italy book. And it'll be a lot of fun. I'll show you everything, how to copy the pattern, trace the pattern out of the book, and other ways to create those shapes for the piecing in that quilt top. There's always more than one way to piece a quilt top and to cut the fabric. We're going to explore more than one way next Saturday on how to cut pieces for that. Alrighty. I'll bring that back up. I'm going to start trimming, snipping the threads, and trimming down to approximately 1/4 inch. I've seamed all those together. And listen, what I'm doing, I'm just dropping it down to my side into a pile down on the floor beside me. It's all good. And then I'm going to measure and cut all 4 of my logs to go around this would be log 19. The 19th, number 19 is the round. And we're getting ready to sew on to our stone log cabin quilt top. Then after this, there's just one more. Okay, one more here. There we go. Let go, fingers. Alrighty, now it's yardstick time again. And I'm going to pull out the book and we're going to see what length I have to cut this bit of strips to. Okay, 19. 2 at 70 inches and 2 at 77 inches. Okay. When we finish round 19, the quilt top will measure 73 by 77. So, and I shut it, and those numbers immediately went out of my head. So I'm going to pull it back up, 70 and 77. Okay, got it, I think. 70 and 77. I'm going to trim the selvage off of this end. There we go. And then we're going to measure 70. So 36 and 34 would be 70. So I want two of those. 36 and 34. Okay. That's 36 right there. And then we want one at 34. Right here. 34. So 36 and 34 will equal 70. there's one. One strip cut at 70 inches. And we want to do another one at that length. So we need two at 70. Come here, you. Here we go. 36. And 34. Okay. Ooh, hand cramp, hand cramp. Okay. Now that will give me my two 70-inch long strips. Now listen, everybody. These strips are all not the same width, so if you're trying to use a jelly roll and go by the numbers I'm repeating here, it's not going to work out. Just so you know that. Because every single strip going around out from the center is a different width. Sometimes the widths are repeated, sometimes they're not, but without that book, you'll never be able to get it figured out. Okay? At least if you're going to completely replicate what we're doing here. So the next two are 77 inches. I need to cut two at 77. So let's see, 36 and 36 is 72, plus 5 would be 77. So that means, that was 36 once. That would be 36 twice. And then I'm going to go 5 inches past this last pin. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, right there. And right there. That will give me a 77-inch strip. Okay. Okay, so there's my I have one more 77-inch strip to cut. Then I'll have all my strips cut for round 19. Okay, I see another comment here. Oh, wonderful, Mia. No, you're fine. You know, it's okay. I tell you, I've been sewing and all that fun stuff since the 1960s. Okay, that's when I started. And I still learn something new every day that I sit down at a sewing machine. Whether I'm making a garment or a quilt, you always learn something new, and that's the fun thing about sewing. Because if there's never a challenge or never anything to learn, then what fun is that, quite honestly, right? You know, it's how we challenge ourselves to learn new skills and tasks that make it fun and interesting. Okay, so, and I'm going to have to make sure I do this right now, or I'll cut one the wrong length. 36. I think that was my second one. Is that right? Yes. So there's 36 and 36, and then we're going to add 5 more inches past that pin for a 77-inch length. Right there. There we go. Woohoo. Yeehaw. Alrighty. And get that one cut off right there at that pin. And I have a little bit of a leftover strip there. That's okay. Trust me, it will not go to waste. And now I have all 4 of the strips cut for round number 19. Okay. Okay, Vanessa, your quilt is coming out a little bigger than on the end of row measurement. You need to check your seam allowances, Vanessa. Are you doing yours on the serger or on the sewing machine? That would be my first question. Because the key to this is maintaining an accurate 1/4 inch seam regardless of which machine you are using. If you are using a serger, make sure you are not trimming off anything extra when you're making the seam with the serger. Okay. Oh, thank you, Eugenia. Okay, then that's fine, Vanessa. Then don't worry about it. Just try to make sure that that it's coming out so that when you take a measurement of the width at the top and the bottom, it's the same, and the same as well for the width and the length. I hope that made sense. As long as it's not coming out wonky, you're good. Okay. So next I'm going to sew down. Well, I'm going to pin down first. One of these here on the top and bottom, which is actually the width. And the way they've come out, it's really accurate, but you saw it wasn't the pattern that I messed up just on that last round by cutting one of my strips just a bit too long by about 4 inches. But you normally, this pinning process right here, that's when you're going to run across it. Just take your time and pin it down. It's all good. It's just another method to double check your measurements. Excuse me, because if it's off, you're going to know it during the pin down process, for sure. Okay, that one is ready to go. Oh, Sarah, welcome back. No, hey, whenever you're trying a new technique, you're always, myself included, if I'm trying something, a type of quilt that I've really never done before and it's new to me, then I myself am a beginner when it comes to that. And that's part of the fun of it, right? Pushing our skill sets to something we're maybe not 100% comfortable with, but that's how we learn. And hopefully have fun in the process. Because listen, everybody, if you're not having fun sewing, then who wants to? If you're not going to have fun, then why would you want to do it? That's just part of it. Get this straightened up here. There we go. Okay. Oh, thank you, Kathy. I really like how it's turning out. I really, really do. Now I'll be happy once it's quilted so I can sleep under it. This will make a nice fall quilt. Oh, well, that bobbin lasted quite a while. Okay. So just cut my thread. I'm going to stick in another bobbin. Come here, Ian. Come on. Come on out. There we go. Okay, I think I have some more wound somewhere. Oh, they're in my case. Da da da. Da da da. Up here. There we go. When I know I'm going to be piecing everybody, I will wind more than one bobbin so that I don't have to take time out to wind a bobbin. Not that it takes that long to do, but that's just one of the little things I like to do. I'll wind 3 or 4 bobbins before I sit down to sew. It's always nice to have some bobbins wound. We're almost to the end of that first one for round number 19. There we go. See how that looks. Get a sneak peek there. Ooh, that's pretty. And the biggest thing with these fabrics, or any fabric as far as that goes, is like this fabric here. It has a really large pattern in it. So the theory is you would want something, don't put 2 fabrics side by side with a really large print in it like this one. You want to notice on each side of that there's a smaller print and a smaller print, okay? Then a very geometric one. That's what you want to do when you're putting fabrics together. You want to vary the density of the pattern in the fabric so that when they're next to each other, they're distinct and they just don't blend together. God, I hope that made sense. There. This will be the next go round right here. Okay. And we'll get this one pinned in. Yes, Vanessa, isn't that nice? On everybody, if you've never operated a serger before, it uses like 3,000 yard cones of thread in it, and one of those cones of thread is what your bobbin is. So you have a 3,000 yard long bobbin thread when you piece on a serger. The next quilt is not really a serger friendly one, but the one after that will be, and I will do that one. The third quilt top out of this book, I'm going to piece on a serger. And the only reason I'm saying that the next quilt is not serger friendly, there are Y seams in it, and that's just something that's not very easy to do on a serger when it comes to piecing. Not saying it can't be done, but it's not easy to do. And if you're using a chain stitch on a serger that looks like a straight stitch, it would be easier to do that way on a serger. But in the long run, Y seams, in my opinion, are best done on a sewing machine. The borders now, anything with a straight seam to it, is perfect for serger piecing. Excuse me. Okay. There we go. Now that one is ready to go. Hi, Marcia. Okay. Okay. Saying okay a lot. Yeah, I just don't know. Just going to get this set, start stitching. Okay, now I'm going to straighten this out so it lays nice and flat to the left of my needle. And now we're ready to rock and roll and get this second strip sewn down. There we go. And as we're sewing this one down, I'm still thinking about my quilting, how I'm going to quilt it. Another good thing, another way, my feather idea, I will definitely use that, but I'll be using more than one one technique in these strips that go around the center. Another one will be what's called a wishbone. Another one will be called ribbon candy. Lots of cool ways. And if you don't have a long arm, you don't have, let's say you're not comfortable with free motion quilting, you could quilt this with your walking foot and decorative stitches just as easy. It would look wonderful. Well, Mia, not for the quilting itself. We're just talking about the piecing on the serger, not actually doing quilting on the serger. A large quilt top like this would be impossible to quilt on a serger, as far as that goes. But one of the things about piecing on a serger, now we're just talking about piecing, okay? The feed dogs on a serger are twice as the size of the feed dogs on your sewing machine, which means you actually can have much better fabric control piecing on a serger as opposed to a sewing machine. But what that really means is this also. A serger will run faster than a sewing machine. It's just as accurate. There are multiple ways to achieve a perfect quarter-inch seam on a serger. A serger will finish the edges of your seam so it doesn't unravel. Let's say you're going to piece a quilt top and it may not be quilted for a year or longer. I have some quilt tops here that I've made from over 5 years ago that are still just haven't gotten quilted yet for whatever reason. And it's beneficial in that aspect as far as that goes. And then also the bobbin thing I was talking about, you never have to wind a bobbin on a serger ever, because the actual cone or spool of thread itself is what the bobbin is. You get to see how that works here in the near future. I'll be doing one of the quilt tops out of this book will be done 100% on the serger, pieced on the serger. And there's more than one way to piece on a serger as well. Depends what type of serger you have. Okay. Wait a second here. That's correct. Nope, that's correct. I thought I had skipped a step. Nope, this is correct. This is round number 3. Goodness. I was having a not a fun aha moment right there. I thought I had messed up again. But I didn't. It's right where it should be. Okay. Perfect. It's all good. It's fun. And it's fun to run a serger as well. Loads of fun. And there's certain ways you can embellish with a serger that you just can't do on a sewing machine also. In a perfect world, everyone should have a nice sewing machine and a nice serger. Then you have the best of both worlds. Okay. Hope you're fine, Mia. I knew what you meant. And if you have ever thought about making clothing, serger is pretty awesome for that as well. That's what they originally were designed for. I like to make clothing and stuff. It's a lot of fun. And the great thing about making, and there's not all clothing is hard to make, everybody, because the patterns you can get, some are advanced patterns, but there are some patterns on it that say easy to sew, and they are. It doesn't have to be complicated to make your own clothing. And I can tell you, clothing you make will generally last much, much longer than stuff you buy off the rack. Okay. Plus, when you make your own, you can go to a fabric store and pick out fabric that you really love instead of settling for what is on a rack at a department store. And quite honestly, a lot of our quilting fabric will make beautiful clothes. Think of that one. I rarely purchase less than 3 yards of fabric for anything, simply because some of the quilting fabric I buy, I don't ever intend to make a quilt out of it. I have it earmarked for a garment instead. Okay, one more round on this one. And let's see here. Well, Eugenia, you can piece with either a 3 or 4 thread. I usually actually like to, if I'm going to use overlock, I like to piece with a 3 thread. Simply because then you're only using 3 cones of thread as opposed to 4. But another way I like to piece is just to use 2 cones of thread and do a chain stitch on the cover stitch side of the Triumph serger, or just to use my Euphoria, which is a cover stitch only machine, to do it that way. But you could use either a 3 or a 4 thread overlock stitch to piece with. The thing is, you just have to measure and get your marks down to make that perfect 1/4 inch seam, just like you would if you were sewing with piecing with a sewing machine. On a baby lock serger, that's easy. The letter M as in Mary, on the stitch width dial will give you exactly a 1/4 inch distance from the left needle to the cutting blade. And that's the easiest way on the overlock side for me to just explain without demoing it on how to achieve a perfect 1/4 inch seam on a serger. There's also certain serger feet that make it easy to adjust to help with that 1/4 inch seam as well. Okay. Well, you can tell when the strips are getting long, your arms get tired pinning. Woohoo. My gosh, everybody. After I get this one sewn on, I will start my last round on this quilt top. I am so excited. Truly I am. Okay. Perfect. Okay, there we go. Oh, Sarah, with a baby lock serger, you wouldn't have to have thread phobia because it has air threading. I know those loopers on other types of sergers are a pain to thread. You do not have to do that on a baby lock serger. Because all you have to do is be able to stick the thread in a hole on the serger and push a button, and the serger will thread the loopers all on its own. And more importantly, on a baby lock serger, you don't have any tension dials to adjust for all those different threads. Okay, that's what sets baby lock sergers apart from any other type of serger out there on the market. Is auto tension and the air threading. Some other sergers have air threading now, but Baby Lock invented that. Okay? There's a lot of copycats out there right now. But Baby Lock is the one that invented air threading on a serger. And the Baby Lock sergers are made in Japan. Okay, getting this last strip on round 19 sewn down. Woohoo! Pressing this seam open right here. That's where I join my strips together. And just finger press them open as I sewed over it. Okay, there is round 19 completed. Oh my goodness, it's exciting. It truly is. Woohoo! Let's get a look at that. See how pretty that one is. Looky there. And that's what I was talking earlier about, watching the size of the prints and fabrics that are next to each other. Because here, let me get that a little closer and you can see that. You can see how much larger this print is and how much smaller this print is. And look at these two. So if I had two prints this size next to side by side, touching each other, they would just kind of blend together. Excuse me. Oh, yes, Sarah, I fully understand that. Okay. So, here we go, everybody. This is the last round right here, and it's a large print. See that? There's round 20 right there. I have to sew these strips together. And then, once again, I'm going to cut them apart to length, to measurement. Okay. Woohoo. Isn't that exciting? The last round, round number 20 for this quilt. Okay. I didn't mean to cut that, but I did. I'm so excited. I cut it ahead of time. It's okay. There we go. Now then, let's get this going on here. Get all these seams sewn. Get all these seams sewn together. All these strips sewn together. Without telling you the width of the strip, it's wider than 2.5 inches. I put a bunch of those down on the floor. They just dropped off. There we go. Okay. Hoo-wee. And another one. And another one. Oh, wonderful, Vanessa. You're moving right along. Because there's only 20. Yes, Jackie, it is exciting. My goodness. And see, everybody, literally, if you have a lot of fabric at home, you could make one of these without using the exact fabric. Excuse me, as long as you can put the fabrics together. And all it really is just making it please since it's your quilt, as long as you love it, everybody else will love it as well, because you have to make yourself happy when you make a quilt. Don't make a quilt to make other people happy. You're the maker, you're the artist. You should be happy with it first and foremost. Because I have found in the past people that criticizes other people's quilts, they're just not happy with they're just not happy, okay? It's one thing to have constructive criticism, but to say hurtful things like, oh, I hate that, it's hideous, or something to that effect, yeah, that's not a cool thing. People that are unhappy inside usually can't say anything nice about anybody or anything, as far as that goes. And it's okay. They just need a little more love and understanding from those that are around them. Okay, so those are all sewn together and trimmed. Now let's see what sizes I have these vinyl strips at. Let's get the book out. I use scraps as a bookmark. Excuse me, why not, right? Okay, 73 and 82, 2 of each. 73 and 82. So we're going to do 2 of the 73s first. Let's see here. I find an end. Here we go. There's an end. Okay. I'm going to trim the selvage off of this end first. There we go. And now, let's see. 73, so that'd be 36 and 36 plus 1 for 73. There's 36. I am using a yardstick to measure here at the machine. Okay, 36 and there would be a second 36. Which would equal 72 plus 1 inch would equal 73. Plus 1 inch equals 73. So there's my first cut at 73 inches. Okay. Okay, so I need another one at 73 because I have to have 2. 2 at 73 and 2 at 82. So there's 36 right there. Make sure that didn't slip. Yep. And this one at 36 will make 72. Then we're going to add 1 inch to that for 73. There we go. That's where I want that cut to be. Right here at this pin. Right there. That'll be 73. That'll give me my 2 cuts of 73. Woohoo. Alrighty. Now I need 2 cuts of 82. Finish that off. I just saw something there. I didn't trim that selvage. Did I? No, I didn't. Let me trim that real quick. It just caught my eye. There we go. Okay. So, what I was saying, I need 2 at 82 goes 36. And 36. And this pin will be a second 36, which would be 72. And then we're going to go 10 inches past the second pin so that we get a total of 82 inches. So 36 plus 36 will equal 72 plus 10 will equal 82. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exactly. Okay, right there is where that cut will be. That's 82 inches. .82 inches right here at the pin. Okay. 82 inches. Right there. And then we have to cut one more at 82, which is 36 plus 36 plus 10. Yes, for 82. There's my first one. Let's drop a pin right there. Then number 2. 36. There's the second one. 36 and 36 is 72. Then we'll measure 10 inches past that second pin for a total of 82 inches. Right there. Okay. Then we're going to trim that one. There's my little leftover piece. And there's my second 82-inch strip. Guess what, everybody? Now we get to start pinning it down and sewing on our last round around our stone log cabin quilt top. I am truly excited about this. My goodness. I know you're probably tired of hearing me say that, but you know, it's always a wonderful, joyous occasion when you finish a quilt top. Okay, so strip number 1. I'm just going to take my time and get it pinned down. And this is actually a test fit as well. That way I know it's going, I cut it the right length and all that fun stuff. Come here, you. There we go. There we go. Okay. I don't know, I guess I'm pinning about every 12 inches or so, something like that. Thereabouts. Excuse me. Okay. And on the end right there, how's that going to work? Oh, perfectly. Yes. Yay. Love it when it works out like that, like it's supposed to. Okay, so here we go. The first log of round 20, which is the last set of strips to go around this wonderful quilt top. Those of you that haven't watched from the beginning, I actually bought this fabric in a kit at a quilt show from about 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. And I just let my needle get I unthreaded my needle because I didn't start it in the fabric. If your needle ever comes unthreaded when you start sewing, that means the needle did not start in fabric, okay? That's what causes that. So it's always better to start your fabric, whether you're sewing on a sewing machine or even a serger. Start it in have fabric under the needle, even if it's a piece of scrap fabric. When you do that, that's called a starter cloth. Normally I don't, because I just try to start it out right in the edge of the fabric of what I'm sewing together. But if you're having issues with that, that is the fix. Use a starter cloth at the beginning of a seam. Okay. And I'm just going to finger press this seam open right here. That's a seam where I join strips together. There's 1 of 4 sewn down. Let's get a sneak peek at how that'll look. Check it out. This is what'll be on this is the outside run around this quilt top. Lovely. So beautiful. Okay. Now we're just going to put one at the opposite side from where we just stitched at. There we go. And we'll go right there. Quilt Odyssey in Hershey, Pennsylvania, Sarah? Did that used to be a quilt shop? I've been to Hershey, Pennsylvania before, many years ago when I worked in a different industry. Of course, we all know what Hershey, Pennsylvania is the most famous for, right? And it's not quilting. But I believe Hershey is pretty close to Amish country also. Hershey chocolate. My goodness. We all know where our good chocolate comes from. If you are a chocolate lover, you will recognize the name Hershey, Pennsylvania. I'm quite certain. Okay. Let's get this one all pinned down, then we can sew it down. Then we can do our stitchy stitch stitch. Almost there. Perfect. Alrighty. So, round number 2 in strip number 2 on round number 20. Here we go. Finish this one down. The last round will be halfway done. Oh my goodness. Oh, wonderful, Belinda. Oh, nice. So, everybody, the Pennsylvania is a beautiful state. The geography of it is just breathtaking. I mean, from the western part of Pennsylvania all the way over to the New Jersey state line. It's just gorgeous through there. Keep on keeping on, everybody. Finger press this seam open. What that does, that reduces bulk, which is really important when you get to quilting one of these. It also just makes your quilt top lay nice and flat. which is a very desirable quality to have in a quilt top. There and there. And almost to the halfway mark on our last round for this wonderful, beautiful stone log cabin quilt top from the book Quilts in Italy. Alrighty. Excuse me. Here we go. I need me a sip of coffee after that one. Now the two long sides, woohoo, and this beauty will be done. All right. Oh, that's horrible, Sarah. Another quilt shop. I'm sure that was due to the pandemic of it closing. That is sad. It sounds like it was a wonderful shop. One of the big difficulties back in 2020, of course, we were all self-quarantining ourselves, but from a business standpoint, fabric was hard to get in to keep a shop going. You know, if the shop really depended on fabric sales to stay open, well, it was difficult back then, especially to get fabric in due to the supply chain stuff. And you know, it hasn't completely fixed itself today from back then. There's still waiting, longer than usual waiting period for stores to get bolts of fabric in. I mean, who would have thought to begin with that would ever have happened? No one could have planned for it. And who would have thought it would have lasted as long as it has lasted? It's just mind-boggling. Just mind-boggling. Okay. Here we go. One more. Okay. So, round number 3 is pinned on of our last round on the Stone Log Cabin Quilts in Italy from the book Quilts in Italy, written by the wonderful Kaif Fassett, internationally known textile artist and designer. Let's finger press that seam open where I join my strips. You know, you gotta just love these fabrics also. They're so bright and colorful, and the patterns in them are so vivid, and it's just what I call happy fabric. I mean, you look at the fabric and it just puts a smile on your face, and even more so it's when you combine it into a quilt top. It's just truly wonderful. And I could see some of this, you know, where it's talking earlier about some of this fabric would be wonderful to make garments or handbags out of. I could even see some of it being used for curtains and cafe curtains especially. It'd be beautiful and whimsical. I mean, why not, right? Find a fabric you love. Why not make stuff out of for your home that just makes you, that puts a smile on your face every time you see it, whether it's a quilt or a throw pillow. Maybe you've went and made a computer bag out of it, or a tote bag. So many things. Your imagination is only your limit. Your only limitation is your imagination. Alrighty. And here we go. Down to the very end of this corner. And everybody, oh my gosh, we're down to our last strip to sew on for this beautiful, beautiful Cafe quilt top. Check it out. Look at the corner. Isn't that lovely? Just lovely. Okay. Got one more strip to pin in place to get it sewn down. And then I'm going to do my best to hold this up in front of the camera so everyone can see it. I will have it pinned on my design wall for next Saturday's episode. But I will do my best so that everyone can see this beautiful quilt. I tell you, the pictures in the book do not truly do it justice. The book is fabulous and beautiful, and I love it. But I will tell you, having the actual quilt top made in front of you is just, there are just not enough words to describe the beauty of this design. I just can't iterate enough about how the pattern itself is so accurate. Oh my goodness. It is so very accurate. And for me, that's an important thing for me. If I'm going to invest the money in this fabric and then cut it all apart, I want that pattern to be accurate too, so I don't waste my beautiful fabric, right? Okay. And I know I'm putting probably more pins in than what I have to, but this is the last side I'm going to be sewing fabric onto. So it's okay. It's okay. About every 12 inches is where I place a pin at. And this is actually fitting the strip. As you've seen, for the most 99% of the time I've been piecing on this quilt top in front of the camera, the pieces have worked out to the exact length they should be 99% of the time. When they didn't, that was my fault, not the pattern's fault, because I mismeasured. Okay. And let's pin in that corner. There we go. And yes, that lined up perfectly. Just perfectly. All right. Whew. Oh my gosh, everybody, this is it. This is it right here. Wowza. I'm taking my first stitch on the last row of my quilt. Okay, here we go, everybody. Are you ready? Here we go. We're going to get it finished on this seam right here. Is our finishing seam. Now, if you're making one of these and you wanted it to be larger than what the pattern called for, all you would have to do is add a border onto it of whatever width you needed to get it to the size you wanted the quilt to finish at, if that's what you wanted to do. You could put one border around it or two even to get it to the size, but I would recommend buying fabric that you've already used in the quilt to do that with. That way it just kind of blends and pulls it all together. Okay. Getting there. We're getting close, everybody. Oh my goodness. Just lining up the raw edges on this last seam. Ooh-wee. Check it out. Just to right here. That's how close we are. Let's press this seam open before we get started. I'm going to finger press this seam open where I join my strips to get the length that I needed. Come on, open up, you. It's not wanting to open. You're just not wanting to get done yet, but we're going to get done. There we go. Now just press that seam line open. Finger pressing, it works just fine. Okay, here we go. There we go. Look at that. Our last 12 inches or so. My goodness. I'm happy it's done, but it's almost sad in a way. Because, well, it's not really sad, but you know what I mean. It's just mixed emotions when you get one of your creations done. Here we go, everybody. Are you ready? Here we go. And there we go. That's our last little stitch. Here we go. Check it out. Let me move my pins out of the way. I'll move over here to this other machine. There we go. Now then, I'm going to turn this over here and I'm going to back it up. Check it out. I'm going to walk backwards away from the camera so you can see as much of it as possible. There we go. This is the width right here. I'm holding up. It's 6 feet wide, everybody. Look at that. Isn't it beautiful? I love this quilt. I love it even more once it's quilted. I'm going to get close so you can get a better look at the fabrics and how they play together. You get half of it up here, then you can really see it as well. There we go. There's the top left corner. There we go. Alrighty. Let's get this beautiful quilt top laid up here. Next Saturday, I will have this displayed on my design wall so you can get a really good look at it. There we go. So, moving forward, everyone. Let's talk about this for a minute. Oh, thank you, Mia. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sandra. And as you can see, literally just in the course of 3 Saturdays, and only for 2.5 to 3.5 hours each session, we pieced this quilt top. You saw it in real time. So literally, if you had all your pieces cut, you could stitch all this together in one day. You really and truly could. So next week, what we're going to start with, and I'm not even going to be cutting the actual fabric for the quilt next weekend, because I'm going to be talking about the different ways to actually cut that fabric. Let me get to the right page here. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So this is what we're going to be making. Our next project is called the Cool Zigzag. Okay. And I will be giving directions of more than one way to cut out all of these pieces, because when you go to the back of this book, there are templates. me get to it. Here we go. Now for that particular quilt, these are the two templates right here. Okay, there and there. So I'm going to show you how to cut this out using just tracing it out and making a template on paper, because I would never cut up this book. Okay, I'll show you how to do that. I'll show you how to cut these with a rotary cutter and a ruler, and we'll investigate as to whether you can actually cut this out with an AccuQuilt cutting system. So let me see if I have a ruler here. If it can be cut with AccuQuilt, it would be with one of the strip dies. Just a second here, let me get a measurement out of the book. Oops. If you have a strip die that cuts 5-inch strips, you could use a 5-inch strip cutting die for AccuQuilt to cut this shape right here. Okay, that's your hint. That's your hint. But we'll go in depth on the cutting. I will cut some fabric next Saturday, but I will not have the fabric for the quilt top in by that time to actually get started on cutting the actual quilt. Okay? Oh, Kathy, purple is one of my favorite colors too. My mother, God rest her soul, that was her favorite color, was purple. Well, her bedroom and the house I grew up in, it was painted purple. She loved it, and it was really beautiful done. If you accent purple on a wall correctly, it's beautiful. It really is. So everybody, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in and going on this journey with me. If you want, in the description below on this video, there's a link, an Amazon link, an affiliate link, where you can actually purchase this book and follow along with us. There are several quilts in here that we're going to make simply because I love this book. Check this one here out. This is one that we're going to make. This is the one after the cool zigzag will be this one here. I love that one. Here's a picture right here of the one that we just completed, the actual quilt. Notice on this picture of the quilt, that's what I'm using for the binding, is the black and white stripes. Perfect. And check this one out. This kind of reminds you of look at the beach umbrellas right over here. That was the inspiration for this colorway. And all that is 2 colors of fabric. As you can see, there's just beautiful, warm, beautiful colors with the Italian landscape in the background, and see how the blue water of the Mediterranean pulls out the blue in that quilt. This is just a fabulous book. One of my favorites. But we'll explore, next week we will start, just so everyone is clear, we'll begin investigating the different ways to cut out the pieces for, let me get to that page, there we go, the cool zigzag quilt. It's on page 90 in the book, and we're going to explore the different ways to cut out the quilt pieces for this. The only piecing is here in the center. These are just large borders. I can tell you right now, I'm having a difficult time finding this border fabric right here. So I'm probably going to substitute a different fabric for that one. So to get started, you don't have to buy the border fabric at the very beginning. It's these pieces here. And some of these are only like a 1/4 yard, 3/8 of a yard. Excuse me. So it looks like a lot of fabric. The quilt itself will measure 67 by 92 inches. it'll be the finished size of the quilt top is 67 by 92. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. That wraps up our stone log cabin quilts in Italy, and we'll get started with another wonderful quilt project next Saturday. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Oop, let me go there. There we go. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a fabulous weekend, and I will see you next week. And next Friday night is when we'll start back. And just so everybody knows, Feature Friday right now, I am doing another quilt in this book. I'm just not using the Cafe fabric for it. Where are you at? Hold on. Where'd you go? It was right here close to this one, I think. Here we go. This one right here called Rusty Squares. This is what I'm doing on Friday nights right now, is the Rusty Squares quilt. But I'm using scraps. This one I'm making online is not the Cafe, but it's inspired by this one, okay? Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thank you. We'll see you later. Bye.